Okay, Assalamu alaikum and hello everybody. In this class, we will discuss the topic of Advanced Audit Assurance AAA, that is quality management. ISQM1, ISQM2, ISA 220 revised, and these are the very important uh, topics of Advanced Audit Assurance. These are the topics which are almost regularly examined by the examiner in almost every exam setting, right? So let's dive in. So the elements, firstly, the IAASB, International Auditing and Assurance Standard Board, developed a framework for audit quality to describe the different elements that create the environment for audit quality at the levels of the engagement, the firm, the national body. The elements of the framework are, firstly, we have some input factors, that is ethics, the attitudes of auditor that are influenced by factors such as the culture of the audit firm, the regulators and oversight bodies. Okay. It also includes the knowledge of the auditors, the skills, the experience of auditors, which are driven by the factors such as a regulatory requirement, for example, rigorous qualifications such as ACCA, ICAEW, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan, ICAP, ICAAI, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and we have more than 160 such regulatory bodies around the world, right? And then we have the processes, the audit process, the quality management procedures, comply with laws, the regulations, and applicable standards. And then we have output from the auditor, example, auditor's report and management letter and others, example, financial interactions. Mm, for example, two-way communication between auditors and those charged with governance, contextual environmental factors. Factors have the potential to affect the nature and quality of financial reporting, and directors or indirectly audit quality. For example, the applicable financial reporting framework, the laws and regulations, and corporate governance. Right? Firm level versus engagement level. The firm organize the quality attributes of input factor and process factors between the audit engagement level, the level of the firm, okay, that is applying the audits undertaken by the firm, and the national level that is applying to all audit firms in that country and the audits they undertake. Example of key attributes and the engagement and firm levels includes the following, as you can see over here. Uh, Input factor at engagement level recognize the wider public interest and the importance of complying with ethical requirements, exhibits objectivity and integrity, professional competence and due care, and professional skepticism is independent. At firm level, it is appropriate tone at the top to safeguard the firm's independence. Appraisals and reward systems promote necessary personnel characteristics. Financial considerations do not drive actions decisions that impair audit quality. Partners and staff undergo continuing professional development and have access to technical support. A culture of consultation on difficult issues, a robust system for making client acceptance and continuous decisions. Then we have some input factors, that is knowledge, the skills, the experience, and time. So at engagement level, its partners and staff have they should have the necessary competences. They should understand the entity's business. They should understand, make the reasonable judgments while undertaking the audit. They have sufficient time and other resources to undertake the audit effectively. The engagement partner is actively involved in risk assessment, planning, supervising, and reviewing the work performed, staff performing audit work. Okay, have sufficient experience and are appropriately directed, supervised, and reviewed, provide a reasonable degree of staff continuity. Uh, at firm level, partners and staff have sufficient time to deal with the difficult issues as they arise. Engagement teams are properly structured. Partners and more senior staff provide less experienced staff with timely appraisals and appropriate coaching or the non-job training. Sufficient training is given to audit partners and staff on audit, accounting, and where appropriate, specialized industry issues. Okay. As far as the audit process and quality control procedures are concerned, the engagement team should comply with auditing standards, relevant laws and regulations, and audit firms' quality control procedures, makes appropriate use of information technology. There is effective interaction with others involved in the audit. There are appropriate arrangements with management to achieve an effective and efficient audit processes. The audit methodology is adopted to develop in professional standards and findings from internal quality reviews and external inspections, encourages the application of professional skepticism, exercise of professional judgment, requires effective supervision and review of audit work. Okay, requires appropriate uh, audit documentation, audit quality is monitored, and appropriate consequential action is taken at all levels. Okay, where required effective engagement, quality control reviews are undertaken. Now, a system under ISQM1. Remember, before this standard ISQM1, it used to be ISQC1, right? There are some minor changes, some changes in it, which we'll discuss. So under ISQM1, quality management for firms that perform audit or reviews of financial statements or assurance or related services engagement, firms are required to design a system of quality management. System of quality management. This system was quality management was not in the ISQC1. The system of quality management is brought or is introduced in ISQ1 to manage the quality of engagement performed by the firm. ISQM1 applies to all firms that perform audit of financial statements or other assurance or related services engagements. So under ISQM1, quality management for firms that performs audit or reviews of financial statements or other assurance or related services engagement, firms are required to design a system of quality management to manage the quality of engagement performed by the firm. ISQM1 applies to all firms that perform audit or review of financial statements or other assurance or related services engagements. The requirements of ISQM1 are based on principle-driven approach that is scalable from small firms to large multinational networks. And SOQM, a system of quality management, is tailored to the firm and its client based only. Scalability enables firms to design a system which addresses their specific circumstances and risks. So far, so good. So ISQM1 consists of 8 components. Okay, it consists of 8 components. And what are those? Look at here. We have relevant ethical requirements. We have acceptance and continuance. We have engagement performance. Okay. We have resources, governance and leadership. We have information and communication, firm's risk assessment process, and monitoring and remediation. Okay, so see, we in ISQC1, there were six elements. Now we have eight elements. That means we have two extra components of you, or you can say two extra elements, and which are those extra two elements. See, we previously we did have governance and leadership. Okay, we did have relevant ethical requirements. We have acceptance and continuance. We have engagement competence, uh, resource. We have but information and continuance. The sixth one is the new one, right? This this sixth one, information and communication, is the new one. Okay, uh, and remediation part is the new one. Okay, the firm risk assessment process. Now let us discuss all in detail. The risk assessment process, which is applied to other seven components, shows how the firm is required to implement the risk-based approach to quality management. Quality risk, the whole population. We have to first look at, is there a reasonably possibility of the risk occurring? If there is, yeah, if the answer is yes, would the quality risk individually have a significant effect on the achievement of quality objectives, right? In this case, if the answer is yes, if the answer is yes, then identify quality risk that is required to be assessed. That means assess the quality to provide a basis for the design and implementation of the related responses. In doing so, assess the possibility of the quality risk occurring and the effect on the achievement of a quality objectives. But if the answer is no, then would the quality risk in combination with other quality risks have a significant effect on the achievement of a quality objectives? Again, if the answer is no, no further action is required, right? But if the answer is yes, then again, identify quality risk that is required to be assessed. Okay, so far so good. Well, as you can see, this process sets quality objectives and identify risks. A firm specific situation and environment will include the technologies it employs, its networks, and external services providers. This process should be ongoing rather than one off, enabling the SOQM to adopt with any changes. The approach is tailored to address the specific risk arising in specific firms and not expected to be the same for every audit firm, regardless of size or client portfolio. Maintaining a tailored focus on risk and mitigation helps a firm to ensure that an appropriate report is issued for each assignment. This may be due to, for example, more competent and well-trained individuals performing complex or risk audits, audit partners feeling more empowered to issue modified audit opinions. In short, acceptance procedures identify threats to independence and ensuring safeguards are enhanced. So far, so good. Uh, Next part is governance and leadership. It establishes the environment that supports the SOQM. Quality objectives include demonstrating a commitment to quality through a culture Firstly, a culture which recognize or reinforce the need to serve the public interest by consistently performing quality engagement, importance of professional ethics, values, attitudes, actions, behaviors of leadership responsibility and accountability for quality and organizational structure and assignments of role responsibilities and authority that is appropriate to enable the design, implementation and operation of the firm's SOQM. Resource needs are implementation and operation of the firm's SOQM. Resource needs are planned for and resources are obtained, allocated, or assigned in a manner that is consistent with the firm's commitment to quality. The chief executive or managing partner should be assigned the responsibility and accountability for the SOKM to ensure the tone of the top. It should enforce firm-wide commitment to quality and ethics. System and policies should reward commitment to quality rather than focusing on client retention. This should allow partners to challenge client judgments without fear of the negative consequences of losing the revenue arising from the loss of the client. In this case, all of the employees of the firm are supported to fulfill their legal and regulatory requirements without undue commercial pressure or self-interest result in inappropriate decision making. Relevant ethical requirements. The SOQM includes objectives and policies to ensure that the firm is personnel fulfill the relevant ethical requirements to which the firm and the firm's engagement are subject. This will again differ depending on the firm size and the client portfolio. The scalability of the standard require firms to have the in place mitigators for ethical risk arising which are appropriate to the firm rather than a fixed response to a given risk. A firm must ensure that not only its own personnel understand comply with relevant ethical requirements, example to training and ethical declarations such as independence forms, but that any component auditors understand and apply the ethical regulations applicable to the group auditor. Relevant ethical requirements in a particular jurisdiction may go beyond those set out in the ISBA code, and and many firms will have policies to mitigate ethical requirements that go beyond minimal requirements. All need to be addressed by the SOQMS failure. Okay. For example, firm or jurisdiction prohibits the acceptance of gifts, even of trivial value. Scalable allows a firm to mitigate the ethical risk that it faces. Example, firm that is part of the large network will require more detailed processes to identify possible conflicts of interest between clients than those in a smaller firm. Uh, Acceptance and continuance of client relationships and specific engagements. The firm, a firm's judgment about whether to accept or continue with the client relationship or specific engagement must be appropriate based on sufficient information about the nature and circumstances of the engagement and the integrity and ethical values of client. The firm's ability to perform the engagement in accordance with the professional standards and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Existing business relationships should be reassessed at the start of each new year prior to reappointment as auditor. This may mean performing fresh know your client checks, repeating independence declaration of employees, reevaluating conflict of interest or competence to perform the audit. It will also involve assessing whether the new information, had it been known at the point of acceptance, would have prevented the firm from accepting the client. Example, the value of client involved in breaches of regulatory may not be compliance with the audit firm. Engagement performance, quality objectives that addresses the performance of quality. Engagements include engagement partners have overall responsibility for managing and achieving the quality and being sufficiently and appropriately involved throughout the engagement. The nature, timing, and extent of the direction and supervision of the engagement teams and review of the work perform is appropriate, and the work of less experienced team members is directed, supervised, and reviewed by more experienced team members. Engagement team exercise appropriate professional judgment and skepticism. Consultation on difficult or continuous matters is undertaken and the conclusions agreed are implemented. Differences of opinion, for example, between the engagement team and the quality engagement reviewer are brought to attention of the firm are resolved. Engagement documentation is assembled on a timely basis after the date of the engagement report and maintained and retained to meet the needs of the firm and the comply with law regulations, relevant ethical requirements or professional standards. Now the resources. Three categories of resources are identified to operate the SOQM perform engagement. The human, the technological, and the intellectual. As far as the human is concerned, personal demonstrates a commitment to quality. Individuals are obtained from the external sources, example, a network, firm, or service provider. When the firm does not have sufficient or appropriate personnel, engagement team members have appropriate competence and capabilities and are given sufficient time. As far as the technological and intellectual is concerned, appropriate resources are obtained or developed, implemented, maintained, used to enable the operation of the firm SOQM and the performance of engagement. For example, IT applications used by the engagement team, example, audit super software, IT application used to manage aspects of quality management, example, assigning personnel to engagement. Uh, It further includes written policies or procedures, a methodology, industrial guides, the standard documentations, access to information, sources, for example, online subscription, right? Any resources from the service providers must be appropriate for use in the firm's SOQM. You must remember this. Okay, information and communication. Next, obtaining, generating, or communicating information is generally ongoing process that involves personnel, encompasses the dissemination of information within the firm and externally. Quality objectives include the information system identifies, captures, processes, maintains a relevant and reliable information. The culture of the firm recognizes and reinforces the responsibility of personnel to exchange information within the firm. A relevant and reliable information is exchanged throughout the firm and with engagement teams and communicated externally when required by law, regulation, or professional standards. Monitoring and remediation process. A monitoring and remediation component is an ongoing process. Provide relevant, reliable, timely information about the design, implementation, operation of the SOQM, a system of quality management, takes appropriate actions to respond to identified deficiencies such as that deficiencies are remediated on a you know timely basis. Monitoring activities, external inspection, other information sources. The negative findings, then we have positive findings. In negative findings, does a deficiency exist? If the answer is yes, then investigate the root cause, evaluate severity and pervasiveness, and then remediate the deficiency and evaluate the remedial action. But if the answer is no, simply no further action required by the standard. I hope you get it till here. So additionally to the enabling the evaluation of the SOQM, the monitoring and the remediation process facilitates the proactive and continual improvement of the engagement quality and the system of quality management. For example, giving the inherent limitations of the SOQM, the identification of deficiencies is not unusual. It is important because prompt identification facilities timely remediations, contribution to a culture of continual improvement. Monitoring activities may provide information that prevents a deficiency through responding to a finding that could, over a period of time, lead to a deficiency. Okay. Uh, Now, what could be your monitoring activities here? Monitoring activities provide the basis for identification of deficiencies. The nature, the timing, and extent of monitoring could be tailored based on factors such as the results of previous monitoring activities. Inspection of completing engagement must be included, at least one for each engagement partner on a cyclical basis. Individual performing monitoring activities must have competence and capabilities, including sufficient time. Engagement team members, quality reviewers are prohibited from performing inspections on their engagements. Evaluating findings and deficiencies, the firm must evaluate findings to determine whether deficiencies exist, including in the monitoring and remediation process. The severity is investigating the root cause, evaluating their effects individually and in aggregate on the SOQM. Remedial actions must be designed and implemented that are responsive to the results of that root cause. The individuals assigned operational responsibility. Monitoring and remediation process must have then evaluated whether the remedial actions are appropriate and implemented. Now, responses to address quality risk. The firm must design and implement responses to address the quality risk in manner that is based on response reasons for the assessments giving to the quality risk. ISQM requires the following specified responses. Firstly, the policies or the procedures. The policies or procedures must be established to identify, evaluate, and address threats to compliance with ethical requirements. Identify, communicate, evaluate, and report any breaches of ethical requirements and appropriately respond to their causes, consequences in the timely manner. Receive, investigate, resolve complaints and allegations about failures to perform work in accordance with the professional standards, legal and regulatory requirements, or non compliance with the firm's policies or procedures for quality management. Address circumstances when the firm becomes aware of information after accepting or continuing a client relationship, engagement that, if known before, would have caused it to decline, or it is obliged by law or regulation to accept a client relationship or engagement. Uh, Require communication with those charged with governance, performing an audit of financial statement, listed entities about how SOKM support the consistent performance of quality audit engagements. The firm must also obtain at least annually a documented confirmation of compliance with independence requirements from all personnel required by the ethical relevant requirements to be independent. Engagement quality control review of the significant judgments made by the engagement team and the consequence conclusions reached thereon performed by the engagement quality reviewer completed or before the date of the engagement report. Policies or procedures must be established for quality engagement quality reviews in accordance with ISQM2 and requirement and engagement quality review for audits of financial statements of listed entity and audit or other engagement for which an engagement quality review is required by law or regulation. A firm determines that engagement quality review is an appropriate response to address one or more quality risks. An engagement quality review may also be an appropriate response to quality risk arising from specific conditions, events, circumstances, actions, or inactions. This may depend on the types of engagement or the types of entity. For example, where uncertainties exist that may cause significant doubt on going concern. Type of entities, those in emerging industries or where the firm has no prior experience. In assurance engagement that requires specialized skills in evaluating the underlying subject matter, for example, greenhouse gas emissions. Type of entities, entities for which concerns were expressed in communication from regulators. Audits with recurring internal or external inspection, findings, unremediated significant deficiencies, or material restatement of the comparative information. Entities other than listed entities that may have public interest or public accountability characteristics, that hold a significant amount of assets in a fiduciary capacity for large number of shareholders. For example, pension funds for which a review is not otherwise required by law or regulation, with a high public profile or whose management or owners have a high public profile with a large number and wide range of stakeholders. An EQ review, a specified response. Engagement quality review is a specified response designed and implemented by the firm to address the quality risk. ISQM1 addresses the scope of engagement subject to the EQ review, engagement quality review. The performance of an EQ review is undertaken at the engagement level by the EQ reviewer on the behalf of the firm. The appointment and the eligibility of the EQ reviewer uh, and the reviewer's responsibilities relating to the performance and documentation of the EQ review. The objectives of ISQM2 is stated as the objectives of the firm through appointing an eligible engagement quality reviewer is to perform objective evaluation of the significant judgments made by the engagement team and the conclusion reached thereon. So ISQM2 is basically a unique standard in that it addresses the responsibilities of multiple parties, that the firm, the EQ reviewer, however, since the EQ reviewer is acting on the behalf of the firm, the objective of the standard has been framed as the objective of the firm. ISQM2 addresses the eligibility of the individuals within the firm responsible for appointing EQ reviewers, the eligibility of the EQ reviewers, the eligibility of individuals who assist the EQ reviewer in performing the review, the EQ reviewer's responsibility for performing the review, including the work of individual assessing in the law, in the preview limitations of the eligibility of the previous engagement partner to be appointed as EQ reviewer. EQ, engagement quality reviewer, a partner, other individual in the firm, or an external individual appointed by the firm to perform the engagement quality review, have policies or procedures to assign the responsibility for appointing the EQ reviews to one or more individuals with the competence, capabilities, appropriate authority to fulfill the responsibility, specifying the eligibility, the criteria for appointment as an EQ reviewer must not be a member of the engagement team and meet three criteria. And what are those? Look at here. Firstly, competence, capabilities, including sufficient time and appropriate authority. Number two, comply with relevant ethical requirements, including objectivity and independence. Number three, comply with laws and regulations relevant to eligibility of EQ reviewers. Individuals who assist the EQ reviewer must similarly not be members of the engagement team and meet the criteria 1 and 2. the pol- sorry, the policies or procedures must address threats to objectivity created by an individual being appointed as as an inquirer after previously serving as the engagement partner, including a cooling off period of 2 years or a longer period if required by the relevant ethical requirements. As far as the objectivity of an EQ reviewer is concerned, ISQM to in addressing the eligibility of an individual to serve in an EQ review role, focusing on the ethical attribute of objectivity, among other means that the code, the elaborates the need to identify, evaluate, and address threat to compliance with the fundamental principles of objectivity that arise in the appointment of the individual as an EQ reviewer for a given engagement. For example, the following has been addressed as an example of familiarity threat. An individual who is being considered to serve an appropriate reviewer as a safeguard to address a threat, having a close relationship with an individual who performed the work explicitly refers to the support the requirement in ISQM2 for a firm to establish a condition for eligibility, a cooling off period of 2 years before an engagement partner can assume the EQ reviewer role on the same engagement, and emphasize that this cooling off requirement serves the dual objective of supporting compliance with the fundamental principles of objectivity and the high quality of engagements. Audits of financial statements. Finally, ISA 220, revised quality management for an audit of financial statements, deals with specific responsibilities of the auditor regarding the quality management at the engagement level for an audit of financial statement, the related responsibility of the engagement partner, overall responsibility of the engagement partner to manage and achieve quality is demonstrated to sufficient and appropriate involvement throughout the engagement, as such as that a significant judgments and the conclusion reached at appropriate giving the nature and circumstances of the audit, the stand back, the leadership, the direction, the supervision, and the review. So in this case, engagement partner is responsible for managing and achieving quality. Engagement partner is responsible for determining the nature, timing, and extent of direction, supervision, and review. Engagement partner must be satisfied that involvement has been sufficient and appropriate to provide basis for taking overall responsibility. The engagement partner is ultimately responsible for compliance with the requirements of ISA 220, which include the following specific responsibilities, that is leadership. Firstly, the leadership in the its clear, consistent, effective actions that reflect the firm's commitment to quality and establish the communicate the expected behavior of engagement team members, relevant ethical requirements, uh, team members, awareness of ethical requirements, giving the nature and circumstances of the audit engagement, determining the prior to dating the auditor's report, acceptance and continuance, determine the firm's policies or procedures for the acceptance and continuance have been followed, and the conclusion reached is appropriate, using the resources assigned or made available to the engagement team, engagement performance, direction, supervision, and review, undertaking consultation on difficult or continuous matters or other matters requiring consultation, for example, EQ review, engagement quality review, remaining alert throughout the audit for the information that may be relevant to the firm's monitoring and remediation process, communication such information to those responsible for it. So, engagement team, all partners and staff performing the audit engagement and any other individual performing audit procedures on the engagement, excluding external experts such as the valuers uh, of properties, etc., and internal auditor who provide direct assistance on an engagement. So, direction, supervision, and review. EP is engagement partner responsible for determining the nature, timing, and extent of direction, supervision, and review. Plan and performance according with the firm policies, procedures, professional standards such as ISS, IASs, IFRSs, and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Work plan to be performed at the interim date may be directed, supervised, and reviewed at the same date as the performance of the procedures rather than at the end of the day period, so that any necessary corrective action can be taken in a timely manner. Direction involves informing team members their responsibilities, contributing to a management and achievement of quality, maintaining a questioning mind, and being aware of bias in exercise professional skepticism, fulfilling relevant and ethical requirements, perform audit procedures, and for experienced team members, the direction, supervision, review of the work, less experienced team members, understanding the objectives of the work to be performed, and the detailed instructions regarding the nature, timing, and extent of planned audit procedures, how to address threats to the achievement of quality, example, budget for or resource constraints should not result in the team members modifying or failing to perform plan audit procedures. Communication tools include team briefing meetings and briefing memos, audit program, time budgets, overall audit strategy and plan. Supervision may include matters such as the tracking the progress of the audit, which includes monitoring progress against the audit plan, whether the objectives of the work performed has been achieved, the ongoing adequacy of assigned resources, taking appropriate action to address issues arising, example, reassigning planned audit procedures, more experienced team members when issuing more complex than initially anticipated, identifying matters for consultation or consideration by more experienced team members, providing coaching and on the job training to team members, creating an environment in which team members can raise concerns without fear of reprisals. Review provide support for the consultation that the requirements of ISA 220 have been met. Work performed by a team member is reviewed by more experienced team members. Reviewers, work has been performed in accordance with firm's policies or procedures, professional standards, and regulatory and legal requirements. All significant matters have been raised for further consideration. Appropriate consultation have taken place, and the resulting conclusions have been documented and implemented. There is a need to revise the nature, timing, and extent of work performed. Work performed supports the conclusion reached and is appropriately documented. Evidence is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for the audit opinion, and objectives audit procedures have been achieved. As far as the engagement partner review is concerned, the timely review of documentation by the EP at the appropriate stages throughout the audit enables significant matters to be resolved to the engagement partner satisfaction or before the date of the auditor's report. The EP need not review all audit documentation. The EP exercises professional judgment, identifying the areas of significant judgment made by the engagement team. For example, planning matters such as the determination of materiality, composition of engagement team, including experts in specialist areas of accounting or auditing, the decision to involve an auditor expert, situation in which the assessment of inherent risk requires significant judgment, related party relationships, transaction and disclosures, conclusion on significant areas, for example, certain accounting estimate policies or going concern. The evaluation of the work performed by the experts and the conclusion drawn therefrom in group audit situations, the proposed overall group audit strategy, group audit plan, decisions about the involvement of component auditors, including how to direct and supervise them and review their work. All matters affecting the overall audit strategy and audit plan have been addressed. the significance of corrected and uncorrected misstatements identified. The proposed audit opinion matters to be communicated in the auditor's report. For example, key audit matters. Engagement quality review and their responsibilities for audit engagement for engagement quality reviews is the EP is required to determine the EQ reviewer has been appointed, cooperate with the Q reviewer and inform other matters of the engagement team of their responsibility to do so, discuss any significant matters and judgments arising during the audit, including those identified during the EQ review with the EQ reviewer and no date the audit report until the completion of the engagement quality review. Now, the performing the EQ review will perform by the ISQM1, discuss significant matters, review selected documentations related to significant judgments, reach to evaluate the documentation supports, the conclusion reached are appropriate, evaluate the basis on which engagement partner determine relevant ethical requirements, evaluate whether there are appropriate conclusions on the difficult or continuous matters, evaluate the sufficiency and appropriateness of the engagement partner's involvement, review the financial statements and the auditor report there on the a description of the key audit matters. If applicable, the reviewer should identify or notify concerns to engagement partner in first instance. If not resolved, reviewer must notify the appropriate individual in the firm that the review cannot be completed, that individual may need to be consulted within or outside the firm, professional body. ISQM also includes stand back requirement for the reviewer to determine whether all the requirements for the EQR have been met and whether the review is complete. Therefore, EQ reviewer notifies the engagement partner that the review is complete when satisfied the requirements of ISQM2 have been met. So EQ review must be completed before dating the auditor's report. The documentation must be sufficient to allow an experienced practitioner having no previous connection to the engagement to understand the nature, timing, extent of the EQ review procedures performed. Individuals firms may have policies and procedures that go further than, and this is as part of their system of quality management SOQM. Okay, so this is it. I hope you get it. This is a very important area. So you must be pro, or I must say, the cheetah, the lion in this topic. Okay, before appearing in the exam. So stay tuned. We will do some related exams questions. And till then, take care. Bye bye.